What's happening, Croga Nutrition crew?
Hey, Dave.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. So Croga Nutrition clients or potential clients, we put a question out to our newest nutrition clients, group of nutrition clients, and also some old ones that maybe just had some stuff pop in their head recently, asking if there were some questions that we could answer as a team that are things that are just out there or they're curious about or they just haven't quite figured out yet if they're new to the program. So we got, let's see, I think 10, 11 questions, something like that. So we're just going to run through them tonight and we're going to give our feedback and our advice. And if we come up with more or if this spurs on more questions, let us know. And we will do these videos regularly. So in the top left corner over here, my left, we have Miss Stephanie. In the bottom left corner, we have Miss Megan. Right below me, we have Mr. Cody. And I am Coach Dave. So we're going to get it started right away. Our first question that we received in our Facebook group was, I currently find myself with extra carbs towards the end of the day. In my opinion, that's very lucky. What's some good snack ideas? Maybe pre and post workout. They're basically trying to not end up with tons of carbs to eat, I guess, at dinner or after dinner. My guess would be because they don't want to be overly full. Oh, look at the cute dog.
Sorry, boomers.
So I guess let's go through and let's go pre and post workout. What would be a snack that you get down with? Stephanie.
I personally like eating bananas before I work out. Like, I just feel like they're a good carb source and like they have that good starch where it's not going to keep you full for super long. Then if you have some extra fat too, maybe put a little peanut butter on it. That's my go-to.
I like it. Megan, pre or post workout carb?
I would echo bananas. I'm also a big fan of like the applesauce squeezers kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, they make baby food ones that are really good too. So
Yep.
I like those.
Cody?
I would probably go with an apple just because it's easy on my stomach. That would be my pre-workout snack. But for like after, something that is a little bit easier to get down, I'd probably go with like juice. If I'm going carb afterwards,
Yeah.
digest.
If you've got a lot of carbs to give, juice is a good one.
Yeah,
but that can get away from you quick.
I'm usually like, I don't feel super hungry after workouts, so it goes down a little bit easier too.
One thing that Dave told me actually a while ago, if you have extra carbs at the end of the day, is to have a freezer waffle. They're not too heavy in carbs, but they get 10 or 12 in there at the end of the day. They don't have much else in them, and they're not super filling either.
Yeah. So usually for me, pre-workout would be, I like bananas too, Steph. Maybe a half or a full banana, depending on what the workout's going to be. If I want my stomach emptier or I don't mind it being a little more full. Post-workout, there's a lot of kind of like sugar protein drinks, but me and Cody drink a thing called Glyco Drive. It's just like, it's basically glycogen. You just put a scoop in with your, which is a carbohydrate. You put a scoop in with your protein, your whey protein that you take post-workout anyway. If you're not that hungry, but you need carbs, it's a great way to get them, especially after a long session. So that would be my advice there. And then if you're ending up with them at the end of the day, like Stephanie said, freezer waffles like Eggos, or if you want something that's like a little air quote healthier, maybe Kodiak pancakes. They make frozen waffles and frozen pancakes now that have a little more protein, a little less.
Kodiak waffles are really good. I used to have them.
Yeah, they're
Kodiak
super dope.
muffins are super.
Halo Top. It's not like the greatest tasting ice cream, but it's not the worst, and it's got pretty low fat.
Sometimes when I had a lot of carbs and had more to eat at the end of the day and wasn't hungry, I would have like a spoonful or two of like jam, like preserves, and that is like delicious and easy to eat at the end of the day.
I've done that with honey.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is like, maybe I'm weird, but a piece of toast, which has like no fat, with like jam or honey or whatever on it is like unbelievably good late at night if you've got like a bunch of carbs left.
Oh, another thing I actually like before workouts, I totally forgot about this, but I do it all the time. I eat granola bars. It's another thing that's pretty easy on my stomach, and it sits well.
Don't they have, you gotta be careful there though, because a lot of them have nuts in them.
That's true. Yeah, you do have to be careful because there is a ton of them that are basically just like nut and honey. But if you can
they might have too much fat is what we're getting at.
Yeah.
You want one that's like mostly, you got to look at the label, but just like mostly carbs and minimal fat. Because if you're not running out of fat at the end of the day, that's going to put you in trouble. I actually have a client that I had to tell to no longer eat the granola bar that they ate every day. Because after the first week of our, like, not a new client, but one like maybe 6 months ago, I can't even remember who it was, but after like the first week or 10 days of their tracking, they were over on fat like every day, like 10 or 15. And it was because they ate a granola bar like every single day, and it had like 15 grams of fat in it. And they just didn't have any idea. So, let's see. Next question. Question 2. Someone said, I would love a good high protein breakfast option that doesn't include 6+ egg whites. I've mixed it up with oatless oatmeal, blah, 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 but I get tired of it quick. This is super common. Breakfast is probably the most important meal to get protein in so you don't get behind the 8 ball. But a lot of people struggle with figuring out how to do that. So let's go in the reverse order. Cody, protein heavy breakfast, or maybe a couple options. What do you like?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it's going to be a little different. But what I usually do is some kind of like a protein with oatmeal. I've mixed it up a bunch. I've done things like butter in my oatmeal with protein powder, or like fruit in my oatmeal with protein powder. But that's going to be, I think, too high for this person if they're doing oatless oatmeal, which I'm guessing they want a low carb, high protein meal. So that one's going to be kind of hard. You can do some kind of like a protein shake. That would be good. There's also like the Kodiak, like muffins and pancakes will probably be a little bit high in carbs too. But I'm guessing if you're not like totally against eggs, probably something like some like ham and eggs. You don't have to have too many eggs, but you can just add a little bit more meat or steak and eggs or something like that. Obviously we'd want like a lean piece of steak or something like that, or like chicken. So we can get high protein and low carbs, which is kind of like what it looks like this person is wanting. Preston also put fat-free Greek yogurt and fat-free cottage cheese, which I think could be a good idea also.
Megan?
Me, high carbs though.
Back to Cody. What was that?
For me, I'm usually eating high carbs, so that would be a little different.
Megan?
What do I do? I do a fair amount of Greek yogurt. I do protein bars, or like I don't even want to call it a protein shake. Like I make more of like a protein smoothie. I also, I find that a lot of the like frozen or protein pancakes from a mix, to your point, Cody, have a lot of carbs in them. And so I actually make my own protein pancakes that are super easy. It's literally a banana, an egg, and protein powder. And you just mix it up and put it in a skillet. And yes, there's carbs from the banana, but not a ton. And there's eggs in it, but you don't feel like you're eating eggs. And I'm a big fan of that. I've also been known to just eat leftovers from dinner. Like, I'm like, just because it's the morning doesn't mean I have to eat like a pancake. Like, my dinner was delicious and high in protein. I'm going to have leftovers.
I like that answer too, because a lot of people are so tied to like what they think is a breakfast food, a lunch food, and a dinner food. And that might be the case most of the time, but it's okay to like step outside the box, right? Whoa, what just happened? You there?
Yeah.
My screen just like went to something else out of nowhere. Sorry. Yeah, so it's okay to step outside the box. Stephanie.
Yeah, I like fat-free Fage yogurt or Greek yogurt every morning. I mix a little bit of peanut butter powder in it, so it's not just plain, and you're not getting like those added sugars if you have like a fruit yogurt. And then I also put in high protein cereal, so it's just like 40 grams of protein basically in the morning. And I mix
Which is awesome.
Yeah. I mix a banana in there because I like to have some carbs with my breakfast. But basically, if you have like a good portion of Greek yogurt and you can find something that you like to have in it and add that flavor, I think that's a great option. I think, Megan, what is that thing that from the Whole30? It's like monkey bread or monkey salad or something. And it's 2 eggs and a banana, and you like mix it together, and you can put peanut butter and coconut flakes on it as well. Susie was telling me about it.
Oh, I don't know.
Name of it. But if you mix eggs and a banana together in a skillet as well, it comes out into like an oatmeal type thing, and it's pretty high protein.
Yeah, I mean, even my kids like that. Well,
Yeah.
Ainsley is just starting to eat food, but she'll eat it. But Isla, like, you could totally trick her into eating eggs by pretending it's a pancake.
Yeah.
By just like mixing banana with egg whites and like
it's really good if you add peanut butter too.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to post this in the group because I was just thinking about this. I just shared this with another client, but that protein powder that Stephanie's talking about, the most well-known one is called PB2.
Yep.
It's basically just like, I don't know how they do it, but it's like a powder of peanuts, but it's very low in fat, but it tastes identical to peanut butter, especially when you put it in things. So if you are someone that likes like chocolate and peanut butter, if you put this powder in a chocolate protein shake, it is unbelievably good. Like unreal, next level stuff. What was that, Megan? What do they do?
The way they make it is they press all the oil out of the peanuts, so that removes the fat from the peanuts.
Oh, cool.
And then they grind it up, so you get the flavor still, but most of the fat is gone.
So it's kind of like the way they make a LaCroix, where they like use except maybe the opposite. They use the oil of the skins to flavor the water. But since it's so little, it has no calories.
Yep.
Interesting. Cool. Let's go to the next one. This is probably my favorite question. The question is, my clothes don't fit anymore because I'm so skinny. I'm such an awesome nutrition client that I can't fit in my clothes anymore. But I'm not done with my weight loss journey. So should I buy new clothes now, or should I wait until I hit my target and buy clothes then? And I'm going to go to Megan on this one first because she has probably most recently been through this journey. So Megan, lead the way. What'd you do?
Yeah, I lost like a total of 6 sizes over the course of a year. So it was definitely,
Fantastic.
yeah, it was exciting. I think that here were some kind of like rules of thumb I used was when I first started noticing my clothes were getting really big, but I still was probably like, I don't know, like 3 months in to where I was like, I really need new clothes. I think you even came over to me, Dave, one day when I was working out, and I was like, kept pulling up my workout pants, just buy new workout pants. Um, but what I would do is I would start kind of like buying maybe 1 or 2 items a week as like a little bit of like a reward for myself. But I tried to focus on um, like basics that I was going to use a lot, and I didn't drop a ton of money on them. And then when I got closer to the size or the weight that I thought was kind of where I would end up, that's when I did like a full, really big purge of my closet and started investing in some like bigger pieces. So I basically, I bought new clothes, but I purposely didn't buy anything expensive or really nice because I knew it was more of a transitional piece. The question about like, should I keep my current clothes in case I need them? So I'm a big believer in like, it's bad karma to keep clothes that are really big for you because I think it almost gives you mental permission to perhaps like gain weight back. That being said, like, you know, if it's a really nice piece and it's maybe like a size or too big, like I think there's whatever, but like I'm also like, if you really like it, get it tailored and taken in. But I'm yeah, I definitely like had just bags and bags and bags of stuff that I gave to Goodwill, and I had no desire to keep any of it because I was like, I don't want mental permission to go back to the size I used to be. I'm much happier at this size, and so I want to, if my clothes start getting tight again, I want that to be a reminder that I need to like get back dialed in versus like, oh, I'll just pull some of the bigger stuff that I kept in the back of my closet.
Yeah. I think, does anyone else have any input on that?
That sounded good to me.
Oh yeah.
Cody hasn't changed sizes in 10 years. So
Cody, I don't believe you don't have an opinion on this. You're such a fashionista.
Right? I probably have. Yeah, I moved into a large probably a few years ago, and that's the only change I've ever made. So
I don't know. The only other thing I would add is just to give yourself grace, because I think like your weight goal is always a moving target. So like you don't need to, oh, like I just hit this new weight, let's throw everything out. Nothing in nutrition is black and white. So I would just give yourself a large gray area. Exactly what Megan said. Throw some stuff out, get a few new pieces, but don't go crazy because you don't know where you're going to be the happiest. Because maybe you lose all this weight and you realize, oh, that's not really where I want to be. I'm a little too lean, and you gain a little weight back and you figure out that these clothes really do fit. So I would just not go crazy on either side.
Yep, totally.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of like personal experience with larger quantities of weight loss, but I have watched my wife do it multiple times now after 2 babies. And I think the first time it was like she actually used it as like the carrot to help her kind of like reach what she wanted to be, which was she wanted to basically be smaller than she was when she got pregnant with our first child. And so her body like it didn't matter what the scale said, but the way the clothes fit mattered, right? So like the scale was obviously slightly tied to that, but you know, you don't necessarily like a person that weighs 150 pounds that's has 30% body fat and a person that's 150 pounds that has 15% body fat look very different, even though they weigh the exact same amount. So I think her thing was a size thing. And what she decided was that she actually decided she was going to hire a stylist when she got to the size that she wanted to get to. and this lady came to our house. She went through her entire closet and told her what she was allowed to keep and what she was not allowed to keep. And then they got rid of the things that she wasn't allowed to keep. And then she went shopping with her. She had a budget, and she bought a bunch of new clothes with this lady in tow, who's an awesome person and just totally cool French lady, and so super stylish. And then at the end of that, she also like taught her a lot about like, these colors are good on you. Don't like, you want to buy this type of pant and these types of shoes and this type of this and that. And so ever since then, she's been able to kind of like do the job herself. But it was kind of like the carrot. So if you're this person that's asking the question, maybe you don't need to go to that extreme, but like maybe you decide that you're going to sign up for Stitch Fix or Trunk Club, or you're gonna and you're gonna use your new size, and you're gonna accumulate a little bit of clothes, and you don't need to spend $5,000 at once, or $2,000 or whatever. Like it could be a couple $100 every couple months, but like you're only gonna use your new size, and you're just gonna kind of like transition to the new whatever. And the other thing that I would say is like, don't be afraid to buy like I don't want to say cheap clothes, but like cheaper clothes than you're used to if you know you're transitioning. So like maybe you buy like t-shirts at Target instead of at Nordstrom's or whatever for 2 months, because you know that like they're going to end up too big, but they're smaller than what you had, right? I don't know. But you're not going to wear them that many times in a couple months on this journey. Cool. Anything else? All right. Let's go to number 4. Is it best to have carbs earlier in the day, or is the goal to split macros between 3 meals? I'm going to leave this one because it's just easy. I think this is personal preference, 100% personal preference. Some people feel good eating a lot more earlier in the day and eating less as they go. Some people don't like going to bed with a full stomach. I am the opposite. I like to eat very little throughout the day, because especially if I'm going to work out, because I don't like having a full stomach. But I do need to have enough carbohydrates to fuel the workout. And then I like to eat just tons at night. So if I'm eating 200 grams of carbs in a day, I might eat 100 between breakfast, snacks, and lunch. And then I might eat 100 at dinner. But that's me. Steph?
I'm the same way actually as Dave. I kind of eat a little bit less during the day, and then I kind of backload everything at dinner, because I don't know, I'm a little bit busier during the day, and then at dinner you can just holistically sit down and have a bigger meal, a nice meal. But I would agree, it's personal preference. And none of us are like training for a physique competition, so nutrient timing we're not really concerned about here at all.
Yeah, that's not gonna, do not be over concerned with timing of carbohydrates. For what we're doing, none of our clients are going to be lean enough. Well, none of our current clients, we may end up with one eventually, but none of our current clients have a goal to be lean enough where nutrient timing will matter. Just hitting your targets for the day and averaging well for a week be more than enough to help you lose the weight or gain the weight for your target. Megan, what's your preference?
I like to have carbs a little earlier in the morning, and save a bit more fat for the evening, is just a preference. I don't like a ton of fat during the day, and I'm an afternoon workouter, so I don't like to have a ton of fat before I work out. I like to save it for after. I also am someone who normally eats my leftovers from the dinner before the previous night for my lunch. And so those usually break down the same. And so really it's my like what I do during breakfast and then how I do snacks is what I kind of get to play with based on what I want to do.
Cody?
When I wake up, I'm not usually too hungry. So I usually actually eat more carbs as the day goes on, similar to you guys basically, but I'll eat a little bit in the morning and then I'll kind of ramp it up during lunch and then I eat the most during dinner. I mean, for me, every day kind of changes, but if I wasn't doing anything that day and I just was focusing on just eating how I wanted, that's probably how I'd do it. As long as you get it all in that day, it should be fine.
I also tell a lot of our clients, like when you're new to this, it's probably best to just split the meals evenly. I usually tell my clients, like, take your totals, divide by 4, eat 1/4 at each meal, and save the last quarter for snacks and dessert. And if you go over on accident or whatever at a meal, so you have a little bit of buffer. Then once you get used to eating the right numbers, then you can start to play with like, oh, I like a little bit less at breakfast, a little bit more at lunch or more dinner or whatever. You can start to mess around. But if you start trying to mess around with that early on in this process, it's a recipe for disaster, especially because you don't know how to think on the fly and just like make up meals or like snacks and all kinds of weird stuff at the end of the night. Let's see, next one. If you're cooking something with oil, sweet potatoes or chicken or whatever, ground beef, how do you count the oil? As the full amount used or a portion given that not all the oil is absorbed by the cooking food? I'm just going to answer this one because the answer is very short. Count all of the oil. There will inevitably be a little bit that you don't consume because it'll be on the pan or maybe there'll be a pinch of burn off, I guess. But like it's so small that it's better to err on the side of caution. But if you use a tablespoon and you use a 1/2 pound of meat, but you only eat half of that, make sure that you only count for what you're consuming. So if you use 1 tablespoon, but you eat half the food in the pan, then that's only a 1/2 tablespoon, right, of oil. So just make sure that you're accounting for it correctly. Like really common is 1 pound of meat and 1 tablespoon of oil, right? So if you eat a quarter of that, 4 ounces, then you got a quarter of the oil, right? Quarter tablespoon. The next one is how much water should a person drink? How many of you have gotten this question?
Maybe once.
Really? That's it?
No, I'm kidding. I get it all the time.
Oh my God, I've gotten this question so many times. Who wants to answer it?
I usually tell people that we would like you to do 1 ounce per pound of body weight. If you don't drink a lot of water, for a lot of people, that's really hard. I usually start them at 60 to 70% of their body weight for a week. And then I try to like slowly add it up. But if you can, 1 ounce of water to 1 pound of body weight would be great.
That's a lot of water.
It is.
Especially if you're a larger human. But if you're a smaller human, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
How many ounces are in a gallon? Like 64? No.
Yeah, it's like
128, I think.
I think it's 128. Something like that. I don't know. I usually ask my clients how much they're.
Megan? I see Megan searching right now.
128.
Megan? 128? Yeah, so if you're 128 pounds, you're drinking a gallon of water every day. If you're 200 pounds, you're drinking, 1 2/3, which is a lot of water.
I think it's really hard for people to start drinking water when they're not used to drinking that much water. So at a minimum, I just say, let's get 4 glasses in. Like, just drink at least some when you wake up, some when you have lunch, and some when you have dinner, and then just keep pushing the water as much as you can. But when you just have to drink it. It really accelerates everything in your body and helps with your weight loss journey.
Yeah, I usually tell people, like, get the biggest bottle you can.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like an obnoxious, like, you don't need to be carrying around a gallon jug, but like if you can get one of those 40-ounce hydro flasks, if you fill it 3 times in a day, you're at 120, right? So like I keep one of those by my bed, and I drink the whole thing like every single night. It's like through the night.
I cannot.
Not on purpose, but like the
I
baby
cannot
wakes
drink water
up.
before I sleep.
I drink some before I sleep. The baby wakes up. I drink some more. The dog wakes up. I drink some more. Like by the morning, it's gone like every time, right? I mean, I have to pee really bad, but that's like, if you keep it accessible, it's very easy to drink that much water. If you make it a chore to get it, it's going to be harder. With everyone working from home, you're close. You're not, as long as you get it before you're going into a meeting, you're not being obnoxious about getting it. So, yeah, we usually start people at 50% of their body weight in ounces, and then we try to get them all the way up to 100%. So if you weigh 200 pounds, it's 200 ounces of water a day would be best. And the thing I want to add to this is that you will pee more, but typically you only do that for like 2 or 3 days. As you consume more water, your body expels more water because it knows it doesn't have to hold on to water, but it's delayed, meaning like it drags. So if you drink 200 ounces of water for 2 days, you might actually expel like 300 or 400 ounces total, because your body's getting rid of the water it's been holding on to because it hasn't been being hydrated as well as it should be. So it's important to understand that like that's very temporary. It will stop happening, and you will actually look leaner by drinking more water. Like bodybuilders drink like 4, 5, 6 gallons of water a day leading into competition to look shredded. They're not going to do that all the time, but they do it at the very end, like last week. The purpose is so their body won't hold any water. So we don't need you doing that, but it's kind of counterintuitive. Most people can't figure it out. The next one is net carbs versus Cody.
Something else that can help with water. There is actually a lot of people that I've worked with, their protein shakes, they'll put milk in instead of water. And if you're having trouble getting water, if you just, instead of putting milk in your protein shake, you put water in there, it's just an easier way to get even more water. It's not going to taste as good, obviously, especially if you like milk, but it's a good way to add a little bit to your water intake for the day.
Yeah. Let's see, net carbs versus total carbs. This person asked, I have tortillas that are 30 grams of carbs a piece, but 25 of those are fiber and only 5 are considered net, air quote, net carbs. How should I log them, net or gross? In addition to this, we had another person ask, what's the deal with like non-soluble fiber and sugar alcohols and things like that? I think it's important for everyone to understand that like net carbs is bullshit. It's marketing. not real. The FDA doesn't recognize it as a actual carbohydrate count, and that's why those products still have to have how many carbohydrates are in them on the label. And that's why also the number of calories that the product is listed with isn't reflective of what the net carbs are. And net carbs is something that was invented to piggyback on low carb diets. So the way this works, without trying to go too deep, is that like their fiber and sugar alcohols don't get digested in your body the same way that other carbohydrates do. Some of them, in theory, pass all the way through. However, they still have calories, right? So what we would like you to do is log or account for all of the carbohydrates, not the net carbohydrates, because we don't want you going over your daily caloric at like your target, which would basically be eating into your deficit, which would prevent you from losing weight. And there is an argument that like, well, if they're just passing through and they're not being absorbed or digested, then they shouldn't count. But from a coaching perspective, that's like just looking for a loophole so that you can eat shit that's not good for you. Because real food, like fruits and vegetables, and protein, right? None of that has net carbs, right? It's all real carbs that you absorb and is calories and fuels your body. So the only place you'll ever find net carbs is on fake synthetic food, whatever you want to call it, right? So in theory, you could use net carbs because some of it is not actually being digested, but maybe you shouldn't be eating so much stuff that's not being digested and has these extra additives that just make it taste good, but it's not actually good for you. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's a tough one because like I eat Quest bars, right? And we eat like what's the magic spoon or whatever,
Magic
like
spoon,
protein.
yeah.
We eat Kodiak cakes and protein, like cereal and all these things. And like some of them have alcohol sugars and some of them have synthetic things that are like fibers that make it taste better that don't really do anything. But the key is to not have large quantities of those things and not to lean on the concept of net carbs so that you can have more of them. Because really you should be having less of those things and more real food if you really want to improve your health. Cool. Anyone have anything to add to that? Kind of a tricky answer. Because the answer is that net carbs is kind of real, but it's not good, really good for you to do it that way.
Carbs.
Yeah, exactly. Just count all your carbs.
One more thing, if you are just finding it in MyFitnessPal, make sure it's all the carbs in there, because a lot of people will log the net carbs and it kind of mess up your stuff. So if you can scan it and also just make sure that it puts all the carbs on there, usually it does, at least from my experience. But if you're just pulling it from MyFitnessPal, a lot of people will just input net carbs instead of the total carbs. So just be aware of that when you guys are logging your food.
sometimes it'll say it in the description too. It'll say like Quest bar net carbs.
Yeah.
That is an immediate red flag. Okay. I think we have 2 or 3 more. The next one is one that we get all the time. If you go way over on carbs or protein in a day, what's the best thing to do? Should you write the day off? Do whatever you want. Should you trade protein and carbs and fat and blah, 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 blah? Or should you compensate the next day and eat less? Or I guess the last option is, should you proceed, hit the other targets, and then the next day try to be perfect or whatever? Who wants to take this one? It's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah, Megan, go.
So what I would say is, I mean, sort of the first option of like write that day off, that I think assumes like, let's say I like blow my lunch. No, absolutely don't write the day off. Like every minute is a new opportunity. It's a new minute. And so I think saying like what's done is done, I can move forward and make good choices. Trying to trade protein for carbs or carbs for protein. Yeah, I mean, I think like that's useful, right? If I'm like, ooh, I had a ton more carbs and fat for my lunch than I maybe should have in terms of like balance across the day. I think there's utility in saying like, so I'm going to have less carbs and fat at dinner. Obviously like that, if it's like a situation where it's like, the only solution is like chugging egg whites at dinner, like that's not really sustainable, but I think like trying to minimize that. In terms of compensating the next day, so my short answer is like, no, like you're leaving yesterday in the past and tomorrow is a new day and just eat how you normally do. That being said, I do think sometimes like this idea of like, oh, like I'm gonna lighten up a little bit today. Like again, like that is not mean, like I'm only eating half my macros because I like freaked out yesterday. But I do think like, oh, especially if, at least for me, if I really, really indulge one day, I often, and I've learned the lesson, don't feel super well the next day. And so I'm not gonna like force a ton of food down, but yeah, you like yo-yoing and trying to like just blow everything over the week. I mean, Cody knows, and I don't mean that Cody knows from personal experience. Cody knows from my experience of like, Cody, I was really on point during the week and then I just blew up over the weekend. What's happening? And he's like, that's not sustainable. It's just each day is a new day. Each meal is a new meal. Do what you are supposed to be doing, and leave what happened in the past in the past.
For this, I actually think that it might depend on where you are in your nutrition journey. In the beginning, it is sometimes really hard to get people to hit their numbers regularly because they're not used to it. Then again, I think if you do plan ahead, this can be pretty avoidable. But another thing, say that maybe something does happen out of your control and your carbs do go way over, I actually don't think it's too bad of an idea for like the rest of that day. You just keep your calories to your regular calories. So if your calories for each day say are like 1,500, and you haven't hit 1,500 and you can make it, say you might have blown your your carbs out of the water, maybe you can just make sure that your calories just kind of go up to that calorie number so that you're pretty consistent with your calories. And then the next day, just try to hit your numbers accurately after that. I wouldn't say like totally blow it. Try to eat as much as you can that day and the next day eat nothing. I would probably just try to keep at least the calories consistent for that day, chalk that up as somewhat of a win, and then move on to the next day as a clean slate.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
off of that, just start the next day as a new day. You don't need to restrict the next day. You want to hit your macros consistently.
Yeah, I think the only thing that may have been missed here is like, this is about developing long-term habits, right? So you're gonna make mistakes. We've all done it. Like, we've all been in a situation where we go to someone's house for lunch or barbecue, and we either are too lazy to like log the food before we eat it, or the things that are being offered just don't fit in our what we're gonna like in our macros for what we thought we had planned. So you leave their house and you're like, well, I guess I have negative 10 carbs and negative 30 grams of fat and 100 grams of protein to eat the rest of the day. What the hell do I do? Right? And in that scenario, like what Megan was saying, like, you don't need to chug egg whites, but maybe you should have a salad for dinner with like tons of lettuce and vegetables and like minimal salad dressing and like just a bunch of chicken and maybe protein shake. And, you know, it might not be your world's greatest dinner, but like you're mitigating the negative impact, and you're just moving on to the next day. And the thing that I don't like about under eating after overeating is that it just sets a bad precedence for your long-term health and long-term relationship with food. Our goal is to eventually get you to a place where you're not tied to your phone logging your food, that you can just kind of eat intuitively and understand like if you're having too much or having too little by the way you feel and the way that you're looking and weighing over time. And with that in mind, if you're overeating and then undereating and overeating and undereating and repeatedly doing that for months to try and compensate for making mistakes and not actually planning your days and not actually eating accurately, then we're not getting anywhere. You're never going to be able to ditch your phone and just be like, yeah, this is approximately how much I eat. I feel pretty good. I'm satisfied. I'm not overly full. I'm not hungry. And I look good still. So think about this as long-term, right? And leave the mistakes behind you. Do not worry about that shit. That is so far from helpful. Second to last one is, this person was is very new to the program, and they were having trouble. They kept going over on their carbs and fat earlier in the day than they planned, but they were aware that that was like kind of because they eat out a lot, and they were planning on changing that. So I guess their question was like, are the people that are more successful with flexible dieting actually a little bit rigid in terms of like they plan ahead? And how can I avoid like going over so early in the day? I see Megan had a response here. So Megan, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I mean, I have some clients who like meal prep for the week and like pre-enter like 90% of what they're going to eat for even the whole week, or certainly like for the whole day in the morning. I personally never did that. What I would do in the beginning that I found a lot of success with was I took my total daily calories. I had a sense then roughly of how many calories I wanted for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So I kind of knew as I would pre-log in the moment, but like not at the beginning of the day. So I kind of knew like as I was making dinner that night, okay, this is about how many calories I want. And then the other thing I did that I found really helpful was when I first started, I would end up with like a ton of one macro at the end of the day and not know how to deal with it. And so I started using in my Fitness Pal, if you look at your day and you go up to the right-hand corner, there's a little view where you can actually see like these bars, your progress on protein, carbs, and fat. It basically shows you like what % of your daily total have you used. And so what I tried to always do was like make those bars roughly even throughout the day, because I knew, because I had different numbers, obviously, for my carbs and my fat, I couldn't just look at the raw numbers and kind of know what am I ahead on fat or behind. But if I could look at the bars and I'd be like, oh, my fat bar is like way ahead, that means I've like been using up a lot more of my fat grams than I have carbs and protein. And so I try to keep those bars relatively like progressing equally throughout the day. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Steph, do you have any strategies there?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I knew nothing about macros, and I feel like that's where a lot of our clients start. So I am an extreme planner. So I would log everything the night before and just like, okay, let's scenario plan. Like if I had a protein for breakfast, what does my lunch look like then? What does my dinner look like then? And I just find that the best strategy, especially when people have no clue what their food is comprised of. I really encourage my clients plan ahead. Just literally it takes 5 minutes the night before you go to bed, plug a few things in on your phone so you're not stressed out the next day.
It's almost like a game too.
Yeah, it's a game. Like what can I fit in? What can I not fit in? Because I find a lot of people don't really understand the macronutrient value at first, and so they get shocked and surprised. And so the more you can plan ahead, the better. That's what I would encourage. That's what I did.
That's one of those freedom through discipline things. Meaning like when you plan, it allows you to be free to think about other things and just to not worry, and you can live a more fulfilled life because you're not trying to like worry about what you're going to eat and if it's going to fit and how much of this and how much of that and blah, blah, blah. I've almost never done that, but when I do, what I do is I almost always eat the same breakfast. I have like 1 or 2 breakfasts that I almost always eat. So the numbers at the end of that are almost always the same.
Yeah.
I almost always eat the same lunch. I almost always have the same snack. In the afternoon, my snack varies, but it's usually around the same quantities. And then at night, just depending on what we decide to cook, that's when I like play the game where I know what we're making, and then I start like doing what you do for the whole day, Steph, but just only dinner.
Yeah.
But being someone that undereats early in the day, I always have tons of room. And then I start doing things like, well, if I only have 3 ounces of pasta, can I eat a scoop of ice cream?
Yeah.
I
do that
messing
too.
around, like, how do
Yeah.
I finagle my dinner so that I get the dessert I want? Or how do I like finagle my pasta so I get a roll or whatever? I start like messing around with the dinner, and that becomes my game. I only do it like in one spot, and I eat the rest of the stuff is like pretty regimented.
Yeah, I think you really just have to find what works for your personality too, and what works for your life. Is it, okay, I want to be more flexible during the day, or do I want to pre-plan and just know exactly what I want to eat? And if you like to eat a variety of foods, that probably works for you. If you just like to eat the same thing every day, being a little bit more structured the night before may work.
Yeah. Cody, you got anything to add?
No, that's pretty good. I mean, if you're planning your day at a time, you're gonna do pretty well. I think the big thing for a lot of people is when they go out, they have a tough time planning ahead. But Megan's really good at this. She has like a list of restaurants and like meals that she likes, right? And she has the macro breakdown of them. And if you know you're going somewhere like the day before, right, going out the day before, you can look at the menu ahead of time and then plan your day earlier around it, or vice versa, right? Say you're having breakfast somewhere, you can plan the rest of the day. But the planning part is really big for success. It makes it a lot easier. Like you guys said, if you can plan it the day before, it is amazing how much just better you feel in that day, less stressed, I would say. I think that's a big thing, that it's not a lot of planning. Like Steph said, it doesn't really take too much time, especially if you just sit down the night before. And you can do it if you are going out. And if you want a bunch of places, Megan has a ton.
Megan's a pro. That's what happens when you travel for work.
I think Cody hits on a good point. Like if you know you're planning to go out to dinner on Friday, just take 10 minutes, look at the menu, see what calories it breaks down to approximately, so you could see how you can structure the rest of the day. So you're not stressed out like, oh my God, I can't have anything to eat in the morning because I'm going out to dinner. Just look it up. It's really easy. That's what I would encourage.
Oh, another thing, MyFitnessPal has a ton of restaurants with meals in them. I would check when you guys go to MyFitnessPal, if it has like a green check mark next to the food, it's usually spot on. So be aware of that. It can help. There's actually a good amount of restaurants that have like a macro breakdown to their food or meals or things like that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like if you're eating somewhere that's not a chain and or doesn't have that information available, I hate to break it to you, but like good chefs use lots of oil and lots of butter in the food, and there's tons of hidden calories. Whatever you guesstimate is always going to be wrong. There will always be more calories in fat in the food than you think is in there. That's what makes it taste good. So the more food you prepare, the better you're going to do. There's no way around it. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to go out, but don't be disillusioned that if you get chicken and it weighs exactly 6 ounces, that you can just log chicken breast 6 ounces. There's a lot of other things on it that are making it taste good when you eat at the table or wherever.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing too. A lot of people are afraid to bring their scales to the restaurants. So if you guys can do that, it'll definitely help. At least be more accurate.
For sure, especially at the beginning. But if you don't want to do it, then use that little hand thing that's in the there's a Working Against Gravity article about estimating proportions using your hand, and you can get relatively close enough to shake a stick at, but you know. Last one, I think you put this one in, Megan, so I'm gonna let you lead the way. The last one is we meal prepped, but I don't know how to count it. Did you put this one in?
Yeah.
If a recipe says it makes 6 portions, do I just eyeball 1/6? When I go to serve myself, do I need to weigh the whole thing and divide by 6? Do I weigh the ingredients raw or cooked? If I weigh them raw, how do I know how much one cooked portion weighs? Blah, blah, blah. I made chicken in a pot with 2 tablespoons of oil. Then I served myself 8 ounces of chicken from that pot. How do I track that? This is a super complicated question. There's a lot of questions inside of it. But I'm going to let Megan lead the way, and then Steph, Cody, and I will clean up the loose ends if there's anything that we find. Sound good?
So I think it depends a bit on how obsessed with how precise we want to be. And I think also like a mantra that I had to repeat to myself was like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Right? Like ideally, yes, if I have a recipe that says it makes 6 portions, I would like make that recipe. Like let's say I'm making a casserole, I would make that recipe and then I would weigh the entire casserole to say, okay, so now I know the entire casserole weighs 1,000 grams. And so I get 1/6 of that. And then I know what, and then I can measure out that. Weighing that full casserole may be logistically really difficult. And so then I'm just going to eyeball 1/6, then it's going to be fine. So I think it's a little bit like, how logistically feasible is it? In terms of like, I get a lot of questions about, like, do I weigh things raw or do I weigh them cooked? I mean, raw is more accurate than cooked. So I encourage people to weigh things raw whenever possible. But like, I think a good example of like how then that can get confusing is like, okay, I weighed chicken raw and I put, a pound of chicken in the pot, I weighed it. And then I cooked it up. Obviously the weight changes when you cook it. And then I served myself 8 ounces. Like, is that 8 ounces raw? Is that 8 ounces cooked? And again, like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good here. Like, the most exact way would be like, I weighed the pound raw. I cooked the whole thing. I weighed the whole thing and then said, okay, I want 8 ounces. That's half a pound. So I'm going to serve myself half. But it's fine to say I served myself 8 ounces and then it's cooked. So, and in terms of like adding in oil, like if they're like, I used 2 tablespoons of oil for the whole dish, but I only ate, or for the whole thing in the pot, I only ate 1/4 of it. It's like, okay, then like enter in your MyFitnessPal 1/4 of the amount of oil you used. Like you use 2 tablespoons total, you enter in 1/2. So that's kind of my thing. Like my short answer, I guess, is like, don't get too obsessed. You can really go down like, I think, a deep rabbit hole of like weighing it like so many times, and it's like, it will be fine. I think the best way to do things when you're meal prepping is try and weigh things raw, make, a big dish, and then, eyeball your portions to say this makes 6 servings. There's 6 servings in the dish. If I want 1 serving, I need to eyeball 1/6 of it. So that's kind of my shorter answer to all those questions rolled into one. But I get a lot of questions about kind of this topic and how do I weigh things and calculate. So I don't know if other people have tips, tricks that they want to share.
Either one of you? I have my opinion, but
I mean, the way that I do it is probably pretty similar to what it sounds like Megan is saying. I'll weigh it raw, cook it, and then if you just like put it all into MyFitnessPal under like a recipe, it should just kind of put it all together for you, and then you can just take portions of it. If you did want to get super serious about like weighing it, just weigh the dish first before you put everything into it, and then you should just need to basically subtract that from it. It's gonna get a little funky with like rice and chicken and
measuring rice.
So that's kind of hard, but the weighing it will give you basically the percentages of how much you're taking from the whole dish. That's about it. I mean, it depends too. Sometimes you just get served cooked stuff. So I would just make sure that when I go to record it, I just make sure I'm recording as raw or I'm recording as cooked. But for the most part, it is kind of hard to do. If you can all cook it and just like serve it all in pieces, that'd be great. But maybe that's not what you like to do.
I like to keep it simple. To be honest, I cook the chicken, I measure it after it's cooked, and I say, okay, that's 5 ounces. I think Dave kind of taught me law of averages. Like a few ounces of water is not going to kill you either way, as long as we're directionally correct and consistent over time. Megan and Cody brought up really great technical points of it, but if you just consistently measure it one way or the other, you're going to be fine. And I wouldn't stress about it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I would also say, Steph, like any errors you're going to make, errors is a strong word, any like, slight over or underestimation you're going to make when cooking for yourself is, to your point earlier, Dave, going to pale in comparison to eating out. So it's like, don't let that be the enemy of, I feel like when I first started counting macros, I was like eating a ton of processed food because I was like, I can just scan it and I know exactly what's in there. And it's like, I was afraid to cook because I was afraid I was going to measure wrong. And it's like, no, like you're actually going to be on a much better track, even if you're slightly off in some of those measurements.
yeah, I think that I think there's a couple things that I think of when I see this question. The first one is if you can cook your meal in pieces and assemble it together later on your plate only, measuring one thing at a time, that's the easiest way. So like if you cook the chicken in one pan and you cook the vegetables and you cook the rice and then you weigh each one cooked on your plate, you know what they all weigh cooked, and just make sure that when you type chicken breast, you type the word cooked in MyFitnessPal, you'll be close enough. Yes, it's not as accurate as if you weighed it raw. If you're cooking for anyone in addition to yourself, it's often hard to make that all work. When you're making meals that get mixed together, what Megan said, usually what I do is I would figure out what it all is ahead of time calorically, or put all of the food in a recipe like Cody said, and then eyeball it. So if you need 1/6, if it's a casserole, I cut the thing in half a long way, and then I make thirds, right? Now I have 6. It's easy enough, or 8, or whatever you got to do. If you're making like a salad or something, it's a little more difficult, or like something that's like in a bowl. I guess you could weigh the whole bowl with the stuff in it. You got to weigh the bowl empty, then put all the stuff in it so you know how much that stuff weighs, and then take the weight out a certain percentage. But yeah, what Stephanie said, like, it's important to understand that every chicken is composed differently genetically, and like the muscle fiber is different. So like when we say that 4 ounces of chicken is 24 grams of protein, well, it's not necessarily that, right? That's just like the average. So some of them will be 20, some of them will be 27, some will be 25, some will be 22. So there's literally no way to ever know what that one piece of chicken or beef or whatever you're eating, or even rice, right? Or even a piece of broccoli, right? It's always going to be slightly off whatever MyFitnessPal says it is. So it's important, as Megan said, to not be overly obsessed with like what the weight is and how it comes out. There's going to be error, but the bell curve rules in this scenario, meaning if you're weighing it cooked and you're logging it cooked, you're probably close enough that it's not going to matter, right? And you're going to make errors under, like clerical errors under and over all day long, every single time. Even a Quest bar that has a barcode and specific macros on the back, it's not perfect. They mix it in a big batch, they pour it in a mold, and then they heat it, and then they package it, right? None of it is ever perfect. So just keep in mind that like we're looking for the best we can do over time. And I think the last piece is, like Megan said, if you know you use 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the entire dish and you're eating approximately 1/4 of the dish, you don't necessarily need to log the dish as a dish. You can log the individual pieces. So if you know there's 1 pound of chicken, 1 pound of pasta, 2 ounces of cheese, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and 1 jar of sauce, right? And you had 1/4. Put all of those things in and put 1/4 of each of them in your log. You don't necessarily need to do all the math to add them up and log them as a casserole, right? It's just like a sandwich. You don't need to log a turkey sandwich. You can log 2 pieces of bread, 1 tablespoon of mayo, 1 tablespoon of mustard, 2 pieces of lettuce, 2 tomatoes, 2 pieces of cheese, 2 ounces of turkey, and and you have a sandwich in your log, but you don't have anything that says turkey sandwich. Does that make sense?
That's what I do a lot. Just break everything down. I just find it so much easier.
I think people get far too obsessed with like, this is a casserole. I need to log it as a casserole. No, it's made of a bunch of other shit. So take all that other stuff, do your best to estimate or measure, if you can, what each thing is and put it in your log. And if you have 12 items at dinner, we know you probably didn't put 12 things on your plate. They're probably all mixed together. We don't care. Okay. I see this all the time. Like when I see stuff like that, like 7, 8, 9, 10 things, I love it because people are thinking in pieces and not being obsessed with like, oh, I had a quiche. Like, I don't care if you had a quiche. It's got cheese and eggs and pie crust and mushrooms and onions in it. Log that stuff, right? It's way simpler that way. Even though you got to log it all.
The only other thing here that I can see relating is going over on your calories but not hitting your macros in MyFitnessPal, or vice versa if you're under your calories or however I said it. Don't worry about the calories as much as just hitting your macros consistently in MyFitnessPal. Law of averages, like Dave mentioned earlier, it doesn't really matter how it's showing up under or over in MyFitnessPal.
Yeah, sometimes people just put in wrong numbers too. So check the labels if you can. Remember that 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of carbs are both 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So if you've got something that's got 20 grams of fat and it doesn't have 180 or more calories, then it's wrong. Sometimes those numbers, people they got fat thumbs, or they just hit the wrong one or whatever, right? Like, check the macro or check the nutritional facts if it's something you've never eaten before, and make sure it's close. And just type in Google. Like, a lot of the stuff is pretty accurate if you just type in 1 ounce chicken breast nutrition facts. It'll be pretty damn close. If your MyFitnessPal is way off, then find another one. There's hundreds of them in there.
Yeah, Google works.
All right. We got through our questions. It took longer than we anticipated, as always. Thank you, coaches, for sticking with me. And thank you for your awesome answers and feedback. And we'll get this thing out to the crew and probably take some snippets and let us know if you have other questions. Cool?
Cool.
All right. Good night, my friends.
Good night.
Thanks.
See ya.